Hello again, everyone. Okay, so normally on Monday, I would be doing a deck guide on the best performing deck of the week, but honestly, I need to show you why we're not going to do that today. So, if I'm showing you on Snap Complete what we've got, I'm not honestly feeling like there's anything that's too worthwhile showing you, purely because a lot of the shells do seem to be very similar to things I've already covered. So, we've got a bit of Mercury Cannonball here, for instance. We did that Wednesday. I feel like this is maybe the closest you would get, but again, I'm not feeling it in terms of, yes, it probably, I mean, if anything, this one here, the first one, it does showcase Aunt May as a very good card in the deck. This one, I'm not entirely sold on, because again, it feels very similar. It's probably maybe just Vision out and Cannonball in, maybe OG Jeff out and Mercury in. There's not too many big differences. And these are obviously worse performing than the first two. So I figure I don't want to just rehash content we've already done. So instead, what we're going to do is this. Yeah, it's tier list time, and thank you to Snap Complete for actually allowing this to be a thing. So we've got all of the Series 3 cards down here, and we're going to go through them all and rank them. Okay, so this could take a while. We've got 125 to go through, so I'm going to try and be as quick and efficient as we can be. So let's start off with Hercules. Hercules, I think, unfortunately, has to go down in D tier, and I was debating F tier, but you do get occasional uses out of Hercules. When we've had these Move Tribunal decks, Hercules is a big part of them, just purely because he allows you to scale up the torch quite well. But even with the improved stat line it had recently, it still feels like it needs to be a 2 cost to be effective. It's similar to Topaz. I feel like when I played Topaz the other day, it felt better than when it was a 3. But it's still a very awkward card to play. So sometimes a card can have good text and still not be that easy to implement in a deck. Okay, after that we got Celine. You know what? I'm going to put this in C, barely. It could have gone in D. The reason is when Celine needs to be in a deck, if we're talking about, say, Galactus Shell, it's a very solid enough card in that you kind of know what it's trying to do. So it's very easy to read the deck because it's like, oh, Celine, that's probably going to be Galactus, or it's going to be Annihilus Junk or something like that. But even though it does that, it still does its job, which is to afflict negative power on both hands. So for that, it does its job, but it's also very, very easy to read. After that, we've got Havoc. Now, I feel for Havoc because when it was a 2-0 and gave +4 power, it probably would have been in A tier. I feel like since then, it's probably dropped down into C, just purely because you can't use another shells as effectively. You know, if it's in an end of turn shell, it's still probably high B tier, low A tier, but outside of that, it's now very hard to use. So I feel like it's a harsh drop in terms of going from what I would consider A to C, but yeah, you just don't see Havoc in like these Agent Venom decks or anything like that now, so I feel it has to be shown or reflected here. Then we got Martyr. Martyr, as mad as it sounds, I feel should be a B tier card. I mean, ask me this a month or so ago, she'd have been A tier or S tier because quite literally she was the best one drop in the game for a spell. I feel like putting it into B tier is just a fair reflection of the nerf in the sense that it's a solid card. If you were to put it in a deck where you can determine it will not move or that you can negate its move, then it's going to be a very solid stat drop. So for that reason, I'll only think it has to be in B. The only reason it doesn't go into A or S is simply because you do have to account for the stat for the move that it could potentially have. So yeah, you don't want to be playing a card that will lose you the game unless you've got a way of preventing it from losing you the game. We've got Mobius and Mobius. Again, I'm going to put this in C tier. I feel like Mobius is a card that will come in and out of metas. You know, if there are loads of discounts coming about, Mobius will just rear its head and say, I'm stopping that. Otherwise, it's a bit of a dead draw when you have it. Silver Samurai. I know it got a buff recently to 4/6, but it's going in F tier. I would love to think that Silver Samurai could actually find a useful home in a shell. I'm sure... Was it with the C... Oh, it wouldn't have even been the C7 deck because it was 5. I would like to think that Silver Samurai could eventually find a home with like the first Ghost Rider and all these kind of things. You try and do like a discount deck that's purely based on a lack of power. But we just haven't hit the nuts with it yet, so until that day, it's down in F tier. Lady Deathstrike. I feel like LDS has to go in A tier. It's a card that I feel I should play more, but I think also it's a card that I forget to include in decks or think about as a counter often. And for that reason, I think it does need to go in A tier because as far as game plans, it can destroy you. You know, if you've got a load of low power cards, while anything 3 or under power, it will wreck your plan. But if you've not accounted for, well, sorry, if you've got anything higher, obviously it won't have an impact, but 5/7's still decent. But yeah, it can be sneaky. People, including myself, do sometimes forget LDS, so she deserves to be up in A. Mirage. I'm going to put Mirage up in A as well. Very close to S tier, but I don't think it's that good. I like the idea of scouting with Mirage. You can get an idea of what your opponent's playing. You also get the power increase, which is nice. But sometimes you can just draw dead cards. I mean, it's very rare, but just supposing your opponent's playing like a War Machine deck and they put Ebony Maw in the deck, it's in their opening hand and they don't want to play it, you've suddenly got a 1/9 Ebony Maw and you've also got no way of dealing with it. So for that reason, Mirage can have moments where it's useless, but majority of the time it's alright. Then we got Echo. I feel like Echo needs to go in D tier, sadly. I've always liked the text of Echo, ever from when it was a Series 5 card and it was released. I like the notion of saying, right, I can play Echo down and then I haven't got to worry about Cosmo. So for that reason, I feel like it has to be above that F tier. But it's just so hard to put it in a deck because it's not essentially just the fact that it's taking up a spot, but just supposing you're wanting to do one shenanigans, you can't go ultra greedy. You know, you can't do one Black Panther on Imzola because you could copy the Echo. So it feels like you're always trying to have to be less greedy with Echo. I mean, it's certainly possible, but it's the phrase I hear a lot in this game is the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And I feel like Echo fills that line quite well. You know, in C2 deck, she does okay because she can just be a bit of tech against ongoing opponents. But other than that, she doesn't really have that great a home. Had Jean Grey. Jean's got to be in D tier as well. She's tried to land in F tier, but I am putting her in D tier. And let me just move my face cam while I'm thinking about it, because this is going to get very awkward if I don't. Here we go. Yeah, I feel like Jean is a D tier card. I would not blame anyone for going for F, but I did something really nerdy over the weekend, and I might actually make a video on it where I listed all of the cards I've used to reach infinite in this game, not including my free-to-play account. I've not done that. And oddly enough, I've climbed to infinite with Jean twice, so she can be useful. You know, she's not a terrible card, but yeah, she just needs something. I don't know what. You know, maybe it's just the idea is she's a lockdown card when I'm sorry, some really noisy cars are driving by my house. She's a lockdown card outside of a lockdown meta. You know, we can't really force lockdown onto the meta, so she's kind of just this odd card where she's like, I mean, I can hold cards in my lane, but we've got loads of cards that move out of lane, so it doesn't really help much. But there's something interesting about her still, but it's nothing really meta warping. Spider-Man 2099. Again, I'm going to go in D tier because every once in a while you might see someone who plays a Spider-Man 2099 with a Ghost Spider and you're like, oh, you know, it does a job. Would it be better if it destroyed a card every time it moved? Definitely. If it was that, it would probably shoot up the ranks quite comfortably. But with it just being a one-time only effect, it has to stay in D. And I kind of respect why they don't want to put it up into multiple instances, because it could become very aggressive, that. But equally, if it's a 5-cost card, realistically, you can only get a couple of moves out of it. So would it be that detrimental when you've got Gambit Ultimate of Death doing what it does? So, yeah, I would actually say Spider-Man 2099 is possibly in an area where it could be altered, but I guess they don't want to. Spider-Ham. Spider-Ham for me is an A tier card. I feel like the actual frustration that Ham can bring in terms of picking one of your cards is really annoying. Probably up there with Iceman icing your card. So yeah, very straightforward A tier. Does what it says on the tin. Occasionally it'll whiff in the sense it might hammer Infinite or something and suddenly it's like, oh, I've helped them. But even then you're getting intel, so it's not the worst trade-off. We've got Silk. I feel like Silk is, I'm going to say A tier, but I feel very harsh not including it in S tier. I feel like I'm being very specific about what S tier is right now. When Silk is in a deck, it's because you want movement. It's straightforward. You don't really care where she moves as long as she is moving. So for me, and that reason alone, she warrants A tier. The only reason she can't go in S is because every now and again you might have a situation where you don't want her to move, and because of how text is, you can't really prevent it. I mean, instances like Bar with No Name, you do not want her moving into there, for instance, or you don't want her moving into the Space Throne, is it? The one card location. There are instances when she could screw you over by moving, but other than that, she is very useful. Ghost Spider. I'm actually playing it in S tier. I know this might be controversial, but I just think Ghost Spider is probably one of the best move cards in the game in terms of it can enable so many cheap moves. You know, and I've talked about just a minute ago Spider-Man 2099 and the Ghost Spider, but I would also argue the idea that you could, well, it's great for enabling move shells. We're talking about Human Torches, daggers, vultures, multiple men, etc. Just a great enabler of those. Not to mention, as I've said in previous videos, you could actually just throw Ghost Spider into really random decks just to reposition things. Like, just supposing you've lost a lane, Ghost Spider, you can yank the last card you played out of that lane and power up another one. I'm not saying anyone ever does it, but it is the practicality of the card that no one ever sees. Howard the Duck. Howard, unfortunately, I'm going to go D tier, very, very close to F tier again. Again, I was surprised. I've got to Infinite twice using Howard, so I think I'm kind of using that as a gauge here with these two. But the main reason it's in this tier is it's got an ongoing text. It does a job, which is not always the best job, but it's a job in the sense it tells you what the top card of your deck is. And it is enabled with things like Spectrum. Does it make it a good card, though? No. I feel like Howard is purely there for the ongoing text and the fact that you can buff it. If it wasn't for that, it would be pretty much bottom of F tier. Nebula, top of S, well, maybe not top of S tier, but definitely in S tier. Just a great power scaler. I don't think Nebula gets enough love in this game. If you were to do an entire tier ranking of every card in the game, I feel like Nebula would, if not be an S tier, she'd be very high A tier. And the fact that we're looking purely at Series 3 here, I feel like it has got to be in S tier. So yeah, I'm more than comfortable with that. You've got to pay attention to a Nebula to make sure it doesn't scale out of control. It might only be 2 power a turn, but just supposing you keep sleeping on that lane, it will grow. So yeah, I definitely feel it needs to be S tier. Stegron. Steggy. I think we'll put that in C tier. A card I like. I do like a bit of Steggy when I can put it in a deck. I usually play it in Sanctum Showdown. But yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't really get much play. Even in these push decks, you usually find other cards get a moment to shine. But yeah, I do like Steggy's effect. I think it's quite good just moving any card out of the lane to the right. So quite nice. Nothing fancy, but quite nice. And stat line's good as well, so even if you don't have anything to move, 4/7's still okay. Snowguard. I think I'm going to very tentatively go C tier there. And I feel very dirty putting it there, really, because, you know what, because of that, I am dropping it down a tier. I'm going to go to D tier. And I feel harsh moving it down, but I was thinking when it was in C tier, how often do I play Snowguard? And the answer is not a lot. I think I might have used her in a free-to-play video where I wanted to build up a collector. Again, that's quite a good use. Maybe you could use Snowguard in location control decks. But other than that, she's more of a hindrance than anything because she's filling your hand. But then, you know, what are you going to do with them? And I'll tell you what I do actually miss for Snowguard. Old Loki. When Loki used to replace the cards in your hand with your opponent's deck, man, Snowguard was useful. You'd play Snowguard, you get 2 cards in your hand, and then you'd just Loki that, and suddenly it's like, right, I've got a whole bunch of new cards. But instead, it completely fell off after Loki was altered, so Yeah, I don't know if Snowguard could do with a tweak. Maybe bring the orc. Is it? Uh, they've got a hawk and a bear, and I think one of them. Oh no, sorry, they're both 3 cost. Maybe they could bring them both back down to 2 cost, which I think they were at one point. I know then if you got a Quinjet on board, it'd be 1 cost, but honestly, is that the worst alteration? I don't know. Personally, I think that might be worth it. Kitty Pride, easily up in S tier. Um, Kitty, I think, might be one of my favourite cards in the game. I don't know if it's definitively the best in this S tier, but just the fact that Kitty enables you to play very short packages, a great enabler of cards like Xiao Lao. I feel like it's just an easy slam dunk for S tier. Just the fact that you can keep returning to hand, growing it. You've got ways of growing the power with like Shuri's Lab. It's just a fantastic card. So, oh, and it's also great in instances like Jean Grey. That's why Jean Grey suffers, because Kitty Pride exists. You know, if you just keep playing Kitty in Jean Grey's lane, you can do whatever you want because you can just play in the other 2 lanes so easily. So yeah, because Kitty's so good, Jean is so bad. Negasonic for me is also S tier. I feel like when she got nerfed recently to a 4/4, I was surprised. Not because she isn't a good card, but because I feel like I don't see her as much as I should. And that has definitely been the case since she went to a 4 cost card from a 3. Do I think that at 4/4 she's unplayable? Hell no. She's still got the same effect. You could probably take her down to a 4/2 and she'd still be effective, because you're after the effect she has, which is you've got priority. You know where your opponent's going to play, so you play Negasonic and just destroy that card they're going for. So many times that'll win your game. So, yeah, Negasonic for me is one of the best cards in Series 3 for sure. Master Mold. I think Master Mold will probably go in C tier, because a bit similar to Celine, you know what kind of deck you're facing if you see a Master Mold. You've seen someone who's playing a bit hand junk, shall we say, trying to put stuff in your hand you don't want. My last video had Master Mold in, and the only it is good, like I say, but there's not essentially good ways around it unless you've got discard, or you've got maybe a Cosmo where you can then prevent the on reveals. So it is a very good card in that sense, but for some reason it's never that powerful. Maybe it's because people can just ignore the Sentinels. So I don't really know what they could do to maybe alter Master Mold to bump it up a tier or two, but honestly, I think for the purpose of what it does in the game, it's actually pretty solid. It's just maybe for the level of character it is, you kind of want it to be a bit more powerful, but I don't really know if it needs to be altered. Nimrod. Nimrod for me, S tier again. I feel like Nimrod is an archetype defining card. You've got 2 types of destroy. You've got Deadpool destroy, you've got Nimrod destroy. And again, maybe there are more, but those are what I would consider like the core of the main 2. And yeah, Nimrod, just fantastic. Basically, you're going to try and make your Nimrod as big as possible through Shuri's, through Symbiote Spider-Man's, and then you're just going to destroy it as many times as you can to spread the Nimrods across the board. So, great card, fun archetype. I feel it's got to be S tier. Stature. Now, Stature for me, I feel is in C tier, and I would like to put it higher, but I can't justify it. I feel like Black Bolt Stature used to be a really good deck, and at some point they got nerfed from 5857 to I think 5756, and they've just not found play rate again because decks have just evolved since then. And I think I saw a Black Bolt recently, Black Bolt Stature deck recently, and it really caught me off guard. So for that reason, I still think it's got playability. I don't think it's a bad card. Same with Black Bolt, which is coming up, but I can't help but wonder if it could go up to 5958, the pair of them. So yeah, that's my thoughts there. Ghost, F tier. And it's a shame, right? I think if this had got the original text, which was your opponent plays their cards first, I think that's how it used to read, it would have been probably a D tier card. Still not a great card, but it would have been something where there would have been a reason to play it, in the sense you wanted to lose priority, which was great in Sarah decks, or at least I found it was good in Sarah decks. But with the current text of removing all end of turn abilities from a lane, I don't really like it. That's the only way I can put it. You look at Mobius, how I put that in C tier, and I recognise some people might go, well, if Mobius is a selective card, then why aren't you putting Ghost in the same tier, or vice versa? For me, there are more times in the current, well, it's not the current meta, but in Marvel Snap in general, where your opponent will try and manipulate the cost of the cards versus just plain end of turn. So for me, it's got to be a F. I just wish there was maybe more flexibility around it. It's a 3-5 stat line. I think maybe if it was a 1-3, which I think might be Ghost's original stat line, or maybe a 2-4 or something, just something where it's a bit easier to throw into a deck and be like, okay, if I don't play it, it doesn't matter. Or especially if it was like a 2-4, you could argue that's like a good vanilla stat line, and then you could maybe just throw it in a deck and it doesn't matter if there's end of turn because you've still got a 2-4. But I feel like 3-5, even though that is base Cyclops stats, it doesn't do enough. 3 is a very important place for a card. It's a very important cost in your deck. And you can't just throw a Ghost in there randomly. So for me, I feel it has to go there. MODOK. I'm going to put MODOK in S tier. And I could understand why people would say it's A. Because when I've been playing my free-to-play account recently, I did try and play a bit of discard without MODOK. And yeah, it isn't easy, I tell you. You've got ways of targeting discards. You've got your Lady Sif with the highest card, you've got Swordmaster with odd cards, Blade with the rightmost card, etc. But MODOK just does the job that you want all of them to do, which is just get rid of every card in your hand. So for me, MODOK is just the best discarder. It's no question about it. Now, I actually got MODOK on my free-to-play account the other day. I'm probably going to do a MODOK video because of that. But yeah, I just don't think you can have, and even if MODOK does slip out of discard decks, like maybe if you talk about the Redshift Agatha decks, even if it's not always in things like that, it's still a great discard. So for me, it has to be S tier. Oh, just to be clear, this is... Oh no, hang on, sorry, I was getting confused then. I thought this was Series 5 for a second. I was going to say it isn't Series 5, doy. Never mind, I'm just having a brain fart. Okay, Shadow King, another one. Straightforward S tier. Don't know why you're trying to go in the other tier, Shadow King. You are S tier. I feel like it's weird how Shadow King isn't being seen more, to be honest. I've seen a bit of it, don't get me wrong, but it's not like I'm seeing it every time I'm playing the game. Yet there are so many power scaling cards right now, so for some reason Shadow King's invisible. So, yeah. Great card. I wish I got it on my free-to-play because I could probably be climbing ranks a lot easier, but for now, it's just where it is. We've got Dazzler. I think Dazzler for me is a B tier card. I feel like Dazzler is when she's got a purpose, she is very good. If you are going to be filling your board, you want a Dazzler. In fact, if you could get multiple Dazzlers, you would be singing. But if you're not going to be going all in on filling your board, she's a 2-2. And, she might be a 2-4 or 2-6, but you really want the 2-8. So, yeah, good card. Won't go in every deck, but good card in the deck she does go in. A good enabler of Dazzler, Sharna. I feel like Sharna is also a B tier. Now, a while ago, I would have said Sharna was probably C or D, but I think we've had some deck archetypes come out in the last year or two that Sharna really appreciates. We're talking about Zoo decks with Dazzler, but also we've had a few Destroy decks that do like the idea of having a bunch of cheap one costs and then destroying them. So yeah, I have been liking the looks of that. I think when we did the Muse video earlier a couple months ago, I think Sharna was a great enabler of that in the sense you put the Sharna down, you get a bunch of one costs, you kill Munger, and then you've got a 12 power Muse. So for me, I liked it. I think that is a very good pairing. And for that reason, I think she deserves to be there because she has got multiple uses, even if she isn't the most flexible a card. You wouldn't throw it in every deck like Dazzler. Sauron. Sauron I'm going to put in C. And it's a very silly reason why I put him in C. Sauron's text. Can I right click here? No, I didn't think I could. Sauron's text used to be that it removed all ongoing abilities from cards in your hand and deck. Now, it just removes the ongoing abilities from cards in your deck. Whilst it might not be the biggest change, I feel like it did impact the card, because Sauron used to just be great at wiping out anything ongoing that you didn't like. Whereas it feels like now you kind of have to do a 1-2 punch with a card like Nightmare. So essentially, Nightmare will change the text of cards in your hand, so then Sauron can deal with the cards in your deck. For me, that's a lot of work. Now, if Sauron was able to do both, it would be the worst thing if you play Nightmare, because Nightmare can still do its job and change your hand. But it would just mean if you don't draw Nightmare, you've still got your hand to work with. So I feel like that change has brought the card down a bit. I think they were worried about Sauron Nightmare being too powerful. But the fact we don't see that deck as often as we could, I think is a sign that it could afford to go back to how it was. That's me personally. Sauron is still a good card. I got my first Infinite using Sauron in my free-to-play. So, again, it's not a bad card. It's just, if you want to push it up a tier or two, I think that's what Sauron would need. Then we've got Orca. Anyone questioning this? I like the idea, right? I like the idea that you've got a big dumb body. I think he goes up to 18 power if he's on his own. But I've said this with Namor, I'll say it with Orca. Make it a 6/18 in this instance, but it loses 7 power if you play another card in the lane. That way it can go in Nightmare Shells. For me, that would be perfect. Actually, I think if you went up to 6/18, it could go up into B tier. And I know that's not like A or S still, but it is much better than F. So, yeah, I can't justify a 6/11 in my deck, you know, if I've got to leave a lane solo for it. But I could afford a 6/18 that I could maybe silence. Zabu. Now, you see, a while ago, Zabu would have been a clear S tier choice. But now I think it's got to be A tier. And the cost reduction Zabu offers is fantastic, bringing your 4s down to 3 cost. But I feel like since it became a 1/1, it's become much harder to play, because even though it will do a job, it's effectively a slow tempo play at the beginning of a game. And my last Infinite that I got with the Zabu 4s deck, Zabu was a winner. You know, as soon as you play Zabu, you're thinking, right, I'm doing good here. But if you didn't pull him, it didn't feel good. So it's definitely a case of you've got to play him early, and you've got to have the deck around him. You can't afford to just play him as a 1-2, which sometimes before it was not a bad player 1-2 in the sense of, all right, stats on the board. Whereas now, you've got to essentially have the board state ready. You know, you've got to have no 4s in your hand, or limited 4s in your hand. You've got to be in your deck. You've got to make the most out of him. So, for that reason, I'm dropping him down 1, but he's still a good card. Sentry. I think Sentry goes in B tier. I like the idea of Sentry just for the simple fact that, yes, it's fairly locked into certain archetypes like Annihilus, but you can have some fun with it as well in terms of Merlin maybe pulling the Void off the board, or maybe you can Cersei the Void, or Annihilus, as we mentioned, Carnage. There's ways of dealing with the Void. And the 419 isn't a terrible stat line either. 419, I wish it was 419, 49. So, yeah. Can I click there? Yeah, 4-9, just checking in to imagine that. So yeah, I think it's alright, but I don't know about you, I kind of wish it was maybe a 410 again. But at 410 he was pretty busted. Null for sure is up here in S tier. Just the threat of a Null in a Destroy deck is quite worrying. You know, you just think, okay, especially when you've got an X23 bonus energy in play, you're thinking, right, they could play Death, Null, plus Deadpool. That is a lot to worry about. So for that reason, Null for me is an S tier. It's just hard to handle power, especially in that situation with 3 cards in play and you don't know where to go and play them. It can be very tough to handle. Silver Surfer, I feel like I'm being generous now with my S's, but it is an archetype defining card. I think if you were to do an entire card collection ranking, Silver Surfer would probably still be an S tier. So it is that good a card. So for me, nice and straightforward choice. Absorbing Man. Absorbing Man for me, I think, would be A tier. It's funny, once upon a time, Absorbing Man was thought of as a really terrible card. I think it had a 4-3 stat line, and it never really made sense to play it, because why would you? You know, it's just kind of meh. But they reworked it, I think, originally to a 4... Actually, it might have been the 4-5 it's at now. I don't know if it went to a 4-6 at one point, but I think it might have been the 4-5, and it really had a boom in play that I think they nerfed it down 1 to 4-4. So yeah, long story short, with the power it's got, it's always a threat. I mean, you play a Brood, you're absorbing man the Brood, you're getting 15 power on the board. So absorbing man can be fantastic. Not to mention it finds a lot of home in these man spider decks as well, which again is another kind of nasty. Agent Coulson. This one saddens me, but it's got to go D tier. My first Infinite deck had Agent Coulson, and I love the effect. You know, a 3/4 that's just going to play 2 cards down. Oh, sorry, give you a 4 and a 5 cost card. My mistake there. Yeah, I just love it for the idea of giving you a bit of randomness in your deck so that you can maybe surprise your opponent. It's not an easy read deck, but I don't know what it is. Coulson's just fallen off. Even with the buff recently to 3/5, it's like, I don't know why I'd want him. You know, you've got Iron Patriot, for instance, at 2/3. That can give you a 4/5 or 6 cost card and a discount if you win the location. Whereas Coulson's just giving you a 4 and a 5, and you've got to play them at the cost they are at. So, yeah, again, that's the difference, though. That's Coulson Series 3, Iron Patriot Series 5. So that is why there is a difference in series. So, arguably, Coulson could fit a niche like that for Iron Patriot, and then when you get Iron Patriot, you don't need Coulson. Atuma. I feel like Atuma has to go down here. And it's a shame because I do think the card can have its moments, right? If I'm talking about these 4 cards down there, I feel like Atuma's probably high on at the top of the 4. You will see it sometimes in Nimrod shells, you'll see it sometimes in just vanilla destroy shells because people just like the idea of playing little cards into an Atuma and it destroying it for them. But for me, you're not really getting that big a benefit because even though it will destroy at the end of turn, you've essentially got to play it down to get the reward, and that turn you're playing it down, you could just destroy it anyway. So, yeah, it's a very funny one. I don't think it's like the... I am going to leave it in F tier, right? But I want people to challenge me on this. If you think it deserves to be in D tier, please do challenge it because I'm struggling to justify it. But there is a bit of me thinking I'm being harsh. So if you've got an argument for it, I'm happy to listen to that. Bast. I feel like Bast fits into the B tier, just in the sense... No, not C tier, B tier. I feel like it sits there just for the fact that it's a very straightforward card. It just sets all the cards in your hand to 3 power. Great in Cerebro 3 shells, even in Agent Venom shells. I think probably the weak spot of Bast is its power. It's 1 power, so you know you're playing down a 1 power to give 3 power to cards that may not be 3 power. So it's risk reward kind of thing. You know, have you got a good hand for the payoff of the low power in that card? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Helicarrier. I'm going to put that in D tier. Honestly, that could even been F tier. And I feel sad about that because I do like Helicarrier in concept. I like the idea that you've got this big card in your in your hand, you discard it, and it gives you a whole bunch of random stuff. Again, it's great in these old collector shells for discard, but that archetype is just never seen now. So for that reason, I feel like it's got to be D tier. The card itself does the job it was designed to do, but I just don't think at 6/12 it's worth playing. Then we got Luke Cage, a 3/2. Again, I feel like it's got to be an S tier. And I know that, again, we're bringing up this tech discussion of why would you have a Luke Cage, but you wouldn't have a Mobius or you wouldn't have a Ghost. For me, simply, you'll bring Luke into decks where you think you will need Luke. So we're talking Cerebro, we're talking about Affliction when you don't want to be afflicted yourself. Luke is just there when you know you might need protection. So it's a good defensive card, if not a great offensive card. Mboku. I'm going to be mean here. You've got to go in F tier, Mboku. And I'll tell you what would make Mboku at least D or C tier if the text was altered to say if in hand or deck. Because the number of times I have Mboku in my starting hand and I'm like, great. It just ruins your game plan. But yeah, I just feel like if Mboku could come out of your hand as well, it'd be worth it, because then even if you've got it in your hand, you can always have it as a surprise play. Whereas as it stands, you've got to hope it's in your deck, and then and only then will it surprise your opponent. Next up is Maria Hill, and I've seen Maria Hill come into the meta a little bit since she got buffed to a 1-3. I'm going to still put her at D tier though, because even though I like the idea of creating a 2-cost card, I still can't say I would choose to put her in a deck. You know, she might have uses, but not enough. You know, it's just like, okay, get a 2-cost, that's nice, I can play on curve. But it's a bit like Agent Coulson. You know, I might just fill my deck with 2 costs anyway, so what's the point of having Maria? She-Hulk. I think She-Hulk goes up to A tier. There's a bit of me, right, that I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if She-Hulk has ever been a 6'11 or a 6'12. But there's a bit of me that wonders if she would ever benefit from a buff. Because as more cards come out, it's hard not to think that she might get power creeped a bit, or power crapped a bit, so maybe going up in power might be good for her one day. Shuri. Absolutely love Shuri. She's going in A tier because, she, like a lot of cards, she doesn't go in every deck, but the deck she can go in, she'll do really good jobs. We talked about Nimrod, Shuri Nimrod, great combo. Super Scroll. That is going to go into D tier. And with very similar category to Luke Cage, Mobius, Ghost, although Ghost isn't ongoing, I feel like Super Scroll is very niche. Again, I've reached Infinite with him twice, which surprised me. I think as cards go, Super Scroll should do better. I actually think if it got a buff, it wouldn't be the worst thing, because I think 4-3 or 4-4 Super Scroll might encourage more play. But maybe they don't want it, because an ongoing card that can copy all ongoing effects from your opponent is quite powerful. So it might kill ongoing metas if Super Scroll did get a buff. Titania, I'm going to put that in C tier. I feel like Titania's actually had a drop in play rate recently. And I think in part it's because the Clog archetype had a nerf. Well, I say a nerf, it got nerfed into oblivion. So I do understand why Titania probably did suffer. I think she's still good in dump decks. You know, just the idea you do have to think about how to play her, just so you don't accidentally send her to your opponent. But you can also use cards to disable that. Well, a card to disable that. So, yeah, I don't think she's the worst card to play. It's just, you need to have a very specific deck shell to get the most out of her. Valkyrie. I want to put Valkyrie in C, but my gut is saying D. I'm going to go C, and I feel like I'm being very generous here. On paper, right, Valkyrie should be as good as Shang-Chi, in that a text set all cards here to 3 power. It's a very powerful card effect, but you never see Valkyrie, and it must. I can only assume it's because she's 5 power and 5 cost, and it just takes a lot to play her. You know, it's hard to do a final turn Valkyrie play. But supposing you've got a load of cards that are dependent on power, she can be absolutely brutal. So yeah, I'm wanting to stick up for her a bit, but it's hard to, because how much play rate she gets, probably D tier is right. Black Panther, S tier card. You know, Black Panther's just such an annoying card in terms of, if you get a Wong, a Black Panther, you know what's coming, you know it's going to be Arnim Zola, and unless you've got a Cosmo or a Shang-Chi or a Shadow King, I know that's 3 cards, but you got to have one of them. The only other option is to somehow scale it or leader it, or, well, saying even that, you wouldn't leader it because you'd be leadering an Arnim Zola. So yeah, you're just kind of stuck at that point. You might as well just retreat. So yeah, Black Panther is a really solid card. Not sure it'd be S tier if it was an entire game collection worth of cards, but in Series 3, yeah, I definitely think it's one of the most potent. Adam Warlock, we'll go with C tier. Adam wouldn't get into every deck for sure. He really wants to go in decks that have essentially, how do I phrase this? He wants to go in decks that will need draw, or they benefit from end of turn. So that's a very select amount of decks, but when you've got the circumstances set around supporting Adam, he is good at doing his job. So for that, I think C tier is worthy. Considering what his text used to be, he could have been an F tier, so I think C tier has been a good promotion to him. Aero. I'm clicking on Aero because it's a while since I actually reread a card text. The last card your opponent played moves to this location. Now, anyone who played Snap at the very beginning of the game, I was just on the cusp of it, would know Aero would have been S tier way back when, because she moved all cards an enemy played, as whenever they played them, essentially. So it was like you could essentially win a lane using Aero. But considering she just moves the last card, I feel like I have to put her in D. And it feels harsh because I do like the flavour of the card, but they've just nerfed her down so hard. And even the 5/10 era a couple of months ago, it's probably a year ago now, that was decent. But because it was 5/10 and it was buffing Scar, they took her down one. So I feel like Aero caught an unfortunate bullet when really she wasn't the problem. It was the cards around her that were the problem. Agatha. I feel like Agatha's going in C tier. If you've got a deck archetype built around controlling Agatha, so you've for the clarity, Agatha will play your cards on even turns. If you've got cards that are going to benefit getting rid of Agatha on even turns, like Redshift, or if you've built your deck solely around odd cost cards, so that she will only play odd cost cards on even turns, maybe you could work around it that way. But it's a very niche deck. Again, I've reached infinite with Agatha, it's possible, but you really need discard effects, or at the very least, you need a very set deck construct, and Agatha can be very challenging in that regard. Arnim. Arnim for me, S tier. I always worry about an Arnim in multiple builds of them, going to be honest. I mean, I've talked about the Arnim Black Panther Wong, but I also think about it when it comes to destroy decks, because supposing someone's built up a Venom, as much as you're worried about the null, you're also worried about the Arnim Zola destroying the Venom and copying it. So there are multiple times that Arnim Zola can be a threatening prospect. So for that reason, for me, it's an S tier card. Baron Mordo, I think this might be the easiest F tier card in the list. The text itself doesn't look that bad on paper. The top card of your opponent's deck costs 6 until turn 6. But the trouble is, most people don't really care about it. They just go, oh, shame. And then they just work with what they got. So Baron's just Baron. I don't think they're going to alter him. I think they've kind of said Baron can suck. So, yeah, Baron sucks. Beast. Beast is an archetype defining card. So for me, S tier. If you want to play any form of bounce, you need Beast, in my opinion. Maybe you could do it without and do Toxin and Falcon, but for me, Beast is the best one because he reduces the cost of the cards he returns to your hand. So, yeah, Beast is big. Black Bolt. Same as Stature, C tier, and yeah, if it maybe went up to a 5/9, I think it could see a little bit more play, but again, I'm not entirely sure they want to make Black Bolt Stature a more meta-dominant threat. Black Cat. As a 1/4, I actually think it's been underplayed right now, so I'm going to put it in B tier. When it was at 1/5, like Martyr, it was getting played a lot. So I feel it's only fitting that Black Cat shares the same tier, because arguably Black Cat should be in more decks as just a solid stat line, but for whatever reason, we're not picking her. So, yeah. It's funny how one power changes things. 1/4, not played. 1/5, everywhere. 1/4, not played. So, yeah, same with Martyr. I haven't seen Martyr much since the nerf from 1/6 to 1/5. And say, work it out, players, work it out. Black Widow, F tier. I want Black Widow to be good again. She used to be an on-reveal with the ability to add a Widow's Bite to your opponent's hand. And I'm not going to deny, it was frustrating. You get a Widow's Bite put into your hand, they might bounce the Black Widow back to their own hand and then play it again. It wasn't nice having your draw impacted, but it was much better. It was a much better card when it was doing that versus this Activate ability, which you can only use once and you have to put the card down to do it. I'm wondering if she'd be better as an objective card. Maybe... I mean, I'm spitballing here off the top of my head. I haven't thought this through at all, but maybe something on the lines of whatever the objective would be, it then puts the Widow's Bite into your opponent's hand, but then they have to fulfill an objective to get rid of it. So you can't just play, you've got to do something to get rid of it. I don't know, I'm really spitballing there, but maybe that would make it more of an interesting card as far as, yes, you have to do an objective and you have to jump through hoops to achieve it, but then your opponent also does as well. And then at least it might justify the fact that it's late play. Don't know. Let me know what you think, folks, because right now she's next to useless. I think I put her in a deck a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago at this point, and it was so hard fitting her in there because as much as you want to have the bite doing things, it just never felt natural. Brood. For some reason, he doesn't want to sit there, but he is an S tier card. Just being able to buff that Brood up. I mean, we've seen with Stick and Ascani lately, you can get absolutely massive Broods and as a result, massive Broodlings. So Brood is just such a great card. Captain Marvel, a 4/6. I actually think Captain Marvel is underplayed right now, so I'm going to put her in B tier. Naturally, she got moved out of the C5 decks of late. I can't remember if I covered her in the C6 build. I might have done. But yeah, I actually think that Captain Marvel's a nice card right now. It's just, again, finding places for her to be. So, I mean, even though we're in a move meta at the moment, or at least we should be, she wouldn't be in that because, like, Mary Jane wouldn't buff her or anything. But again, a 4/6 stat line, it's nice if you just want to win a lane and it's just enough to win. So I feel like she should be seen a little bit more. Cerebro, once again, an archetype-defining card. S tier. I mean, these ones I'm classing as archetype-defining. For me, the reason they're S tier is because you couldn't do the deck they're in without them. So for me, they have to be S tier. And Cerebro is literally the archetype. You can have multiple different types of Cerebro decks, but you need Cerebro in them. So nice and straightforward. Colleen. I feel like Colleen's probably B tier. I think Colleen is a good discard option in low-cost discard shells like the Dakin shells. But I think if you're including her in the higher-end ones, which are like APOC, Khonshu, Weapon H, she's less useful. So yeah, interesting in some, but not in every shell. Crossbones. Again, I'm going to put that in B tier. Very interesting text as far as you can only play to the location you're winning. But if you've got deck constructs that actually just aim for that, Crossbones is quite easy to play, and a 4/10 stat line is not to be sniffed at. So yeah, I think it's worth including there. Crystal, a 3/6. Now, at the 3/4 she was at, she would have been easy F tier. Since she got up to 3/6, I think she's actually C tier quite comfortably, and even possibly B tier, because I mean I've been playing Crystal in the limited time game mode we've got on at the moment, High Voltage, and she's actually pretty good in that as far as just play her down and it gives you an extra draw. Granted, your opponent does as well, but I'm putting Crystal in my deck because I don't really care if my opponent's drawing another card. I just want to get what I want, which is usually something along the lines of Dragon Lord or something like that. So yeah, Crystal's got good all of a sudden. It's only 2 bumper power, but it's just a sign. Sometimes a bit of power is all it needs. Dagger. Dagger, 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 dagger. I'm going to put you in A tier, Dagger, and I feel a little bit harsh doing that because Dagger was at one point really good at a 2/0 stat line, but gaining +3 power for every move. Now it's 2/2 stat line and +2 power for every move. So it's a higher floor but a lower ceiling, and for that reason I feel like it drops down from S to A. But it is still a good card, and it should be in every move shell that is trying to do move cards like that and Human Torch. Daredevil. Unfortunately, Daredevil's in D tier. I really loved this card when I first started playing. It was just great being able to see what your opponent was going to do turn 5, but I feel like the effect of it is really worn off, and ironically, almost because, you know, it isn't a deliberate effect. But, yeah, it's not like you can give it more power to make it more interesting, because even if it was a 2/5, I'd be like, I might throw it into decks, but the thing is you need something to really justify the turn 5 info, like a Professor X or something that would really swing the game on turn 5, whereas I don't think a lot of decks play for turn 5 now. They play for turn 6, and as a result, Daredevil's kind of lost a niche. All right, we're up to another archetype-defining card again, and to be honest, we've got 2 in 1 here. We're going to do Deadpool and Death in S tier, because both, for me, are absolute must-haves in Destroy decks. Or at least in Deadpool Destroy, and Death could go in Destroy and in Discard, to be honest, just because she's 8 cost. But yeah, fantastic cards. Deadpool, you want to build up as big as, make it as powerful as you can so that you keep destroying and doubling and make it as big as possible. Death gets decreased whenever you're destroying cards, so she's easy to play. Just straightforward, great cards. Honestly, when I've only just got Death on my free-to-play account, and I feel like I can actually play a Destroy deck now. So when I said earlier I was thinking about playing a discard deck because of MODOK, I'm also tempted to do a Destroy deck now I've got Death. So I'm going to be recording that later today, so I'm actually debating still which one I'm going to be doing. Debris, 3/7. I think Debris fits in this B tier. I think even at 3/8 she would have been here. I don't think you put Debris in any deck because the rocks can sometimes be a little bit awkward if you haven't got a way of using them or destroying them. But at 3/7 she's still alright. You know, it's a very strong stat line, and the rocks, like I say, you've usually got a use for them. So for me, it's a nice inclusion at 3/7. Destroyer. That is an awkward one to place. I feel like I've got to go D tier on Destroyer, and it feels harsh because Destroyer can be a very good card in certain shells. Like, if you want to just utilize the stat line, if you've got a Cosmo, that is such an easy 6/18 to play, it's unreal. But otherwise, you're either wanting to destroy what's on your board, which requires cards you don't mind destroying, or you need things like Armor or Kaira. So yeah, Destroyer is just so hard to definitively fit into decks. And the weird thing is, he did get changed. His text currently is destroy your cards at other locations, but when I first started playing the game, he was just destroy all cards. And it was fantastic in a way because quite literally it would just blow up your side of the board, but you get so much destruction from it. So if you had turn 7, you could then play anything that benefited off it. But yeah, it just kind of feels a bit lame now. It's hard to pinpoint it. I don't even know what you could do because 6/18 is a very strong stat line, so it's not like power is the issue, it's the effect. I don't know. Maybe Second Dinner are happy with where the card is, but it's one I wouldn't be surprised one day to maybe get a little text change. Doctor Doom, for me, I will put this in A tier. I think Doctor Doom is one of a couple of cards that, even if it's not archetype defining, it's a card that stood the test of time. You know, it has had one change in its history, and that was a change that got reverted. It was the Doom bots were toned down to 4 power. The card went off the meta entirely. So they buffed it back up to 6/5 for the Doom bots, and it returned. Doom is just good at 6/5 with 5 power Doom bots, and when you've got Doom 2099, it can get a little bit oppressive, but honestly, I think it is still a great card without Doom 2099, just for being able to spread 15 power across 3 lanes on the final turn. So yeah, Doom rules all. Doc Ock 4/8. Interesting stat line, but I still miss the old Doc Ock. And again, for those of you who weren't around for that, Doc Ock used to be a 5/10 stat line with the text pull enemy cards to fill this lane, or words to that effect. And it used to be annoying. Don't get me wrong, it was a nasty card because, you know, you could be leaving the lane empty and Doc Ock would just pull everything in your hand to that one lane. Normally cards you didn't want to be playing, and you'd be stuck because your lane would be full then. But at least it was disruptive. Whereas I feel like as a 4/8, it doesn't do that much. I mean, am I right in thinking it's the lowest power? Yeah, pull the lowest power card. I mean, it can be annoying, like maybe it could pull like an Iron Man early or something, you puts it in the wrong lane, but honestly, I wouldn't worry about Doc Ock now compared to the old one, so for me, it kind of has to go down here. Dracula. I'm up here again in S tier, Dracula's S tier. If you get Drac, you've got a good card. It's great for just late game, I'll say late game, it's end of game swinging. Say you've got an Infinite in your hand, Dracula will become a 4/21. It's just such a great ability. Drax. I'm going to put Drax here, and I think we've got to put a caveat on this entire tier list, which is we're talking about normal ranked gameplay, and we're not talking about any limited time game modes for the majority, because I know I've just mentioned that with Crystal, but I have actually played her a bit in normal game. But outside of, say, Sanctum, Drax never sees play. So for that reason, he has to go down here. He's not the worst of the worst, if you like, but say we were doing draft mode and I got an option of Drax versus one of these, I would probably pick Drax. But if I got Drax above any of these, no. Electro. Electro's B tier. When you want ramp, he's good. You know, you get one extra energy. You've got to get rid of him so that you can play more than one card a turn. But he does his job fine. You know, he's not a card I like sticking around even at a 3-5 stat line, but he's all right. Falcon. I feel like Falcon's down in C tier, and it's a bit unfortunate that because the actual text is good in terms of returning all 1-cost cards to your hand, but I feel like with Toxin and Beast, there are quite a lot of bouncers already, so it kind of feels like you don't want to do Falcon, at least most of the time. So yeah, a little bit unfortunate, but it's still a decent card for what it does. Gambit. Gambit is A tier. Very, very close to S tier. The only reason I'm not putting it on S tier is the fact that it is random. Now, let's caveat that. It's random at the end of game. So, 2 and 6, say you do Gambit Silver Surfer for argument's sake. Gambit's got a whole board of cards to choose from, and if your opponent's got any effect like armor on the board, it could still go in that armor lane. For that reason, I feel like it has to drop down from S to A tier. But if you're playing it as a tempo play, and you know that your opponent's played a very powerful 2-cost card, say a Merlin, or I'm trying to think of the big ones, I wouldn't say Iron Patriot, maybe Sam Wilson or something. The point being, Gambit can be really good at disrupting your opponent's early gameplay. And also, just another little thing that does dropping down a little bit, the discard effect is random as well. So it could discard something you don't want discarding. Granted, most Gambit decks will probably have cards you want to discard, but just as a little caveat that depending on the deck construct and the opponent you're facing, Gambit can be great, but it can also misfire. So that's the only reason I'm going for A. But anyone who's saying, oh, that's mad, he should be A tier, I'd respect it. If anything, I've called for him to be nerfed recently. A 3-2 stat line, I wouldn't be complaining. Ghost Rider, 4-5. Let's put him with this 4-5. Ghost Rider's okay. If you've... I feel like we're at a point now with the discard shells where if you need Ghost Rider, it's because you've done something wrong. You know, if you've got to a point where you've discarded your Halla and your only thought is, can I Ghost Rider the Halla? You know you've done something wrong. So for me, that's kind of why Ghost Rider's down there. I don't know if they could alter it to make it a little bit more targeted, but as things stand, that's where I'm putting it. Giganto. I'm going to put Giganto in C tier, and that is purely because Giganto isn't really a card you play. Or at least it's not a card you play with the text it has. You're always looking for a way to play it without that restriction. So you're either looking to discard it and have it appear on the board via a Halla, or you're looking to War Machine it so you can play wherever you want. Giganto, you don't want to just play at the left location, otherwise it's very restrictive. So it's why it's in C tier. You've got ways to do it, and the power to cost ratio is fantastic. But equally, you don't want to be restricted, so that's why it has to go into C. Goose. I feel like Goose is underplayed a little bit. I'm going to put it in C tier, and the reason I say it's underplayed is because we don't seem to have a lot of high-cost meta right now. Maybe a little bit. We've got, like, the Wilson Fisks knocking about. But, I don't know, it feels like Goose could have a little bit of room to stretch its paws a little bit. Maybe it will have its time soon, but for now, I think CT is about as high as it gets. But put it like this, a bit like I said with Drax, would I put things below it? I would have Goose in ahead of a lot of those D tier cards, so maybe that's a sign of where it is. Green Goblin, B tier. Very similar to Celine in the sense you see a Green Goblin, you probably know what's coming, but 3 -4 stat line, it's very powerful, especially if you Celine it to become a 3 -7. But again, you see that coming, you know you're probably going to get Galactus, so it's probably a bad card to play as far as cube equity. You would need to snap before playing it. Hazmat. Hazmat for me is A tier. Again, similar to these, Hazmat is definitely something that is telegraphed, even if you don't play it early. If you have a affliction deck, usually you've got pieces on the board that will signal a Hazmat's coming. But at that point, for your opponent, it's how do I stop it? So for that reason, it shows why she's good. Hala. Hala for me is still S tier. Even though she's been altered from when she first came out, where she used to just revive all discarded cards, she now only, if I get this right, let me check. She now resurrects a card discarded to a random location for each different cost among them. So she'll revive a 1 cost, a 2 cost, a 3 cost, etc., but she won't do multiples. So for that reason, she's still good because you really build your discard decks, or your Hala discard decks, around costs now. So essentially you only have try and discard 1 6 cost, 1 7 cost, 1 8 cost. And for that reason, she works. You target it, and she then resurrects based on what you've targeted. So she's still great. It's just you have to keep in mind what a limitation is. Hellcow, down here in D tier. Ironically, I've actually been putting Hellcow in a discard shell with Hala on my free-to-play account for High Voltage. It's not a good card. I've been playing it purely for the 4/7 stat line, and on the off chance I've not pulled Modok, I can then Hellcow and hopefully Hala. So it's not great, I'll be real, but it's an option. That's the best I can say about it. When it used to discard 2 cards, it was busted. So it's a sign of where Hellcow is that, you give it the power to discard 2 on an activate, it's broken. Give it the power to discard 1, it's not good. Human Torch, easy slam dunk for S tier. Oh, I'm saying that, and then immediately I'm dropping it down to A tier. At 3/3, that was without shadow of a doubt the easiest S tier card you could pick. At 3/2, as we found out recently, it needs work. So unfortunately, it's A tier, but my heart, as you saw, put it in S tier. Invisible Woman, sadly down here in D tier. Yeah, she's lost a bit of her edge as Invisible Woman. I feel like the risk with hiding cards with Invisible Woman is the fact that you've actually got to be able to play it against a deck that is not going to disable her or punish you for hiding things like by putting a Cosmo or something behind it. So yeah, yes, I don't even think power would affect Sue well. I think maybe she could do with something. The thing is, you can't give her more because then she becomes too powerful. So she's got limitations, and the thing is, the game's now at a point where those limitations are really showing. So unfortunately, she's kind of just stuck here. Jane Foster, A tier card. You would only play Jane in decks that have got 0 cost cards or cards you've turned into 0 cost cards, like Mr. Negative. So for that reason, Jane is a great card. If you're pulling the hammers from a Thor deck, great. But otherwise, she's not doing much of anything. So A tier, because when she does her job, she does it well. But if she's not doing much. Juggernaut. I'm going to put it in A tier, but I would completely respect anyone wanting S tier because a well-chosen Juggernaut, i.e. you've got it in the right deck archetype yourself and you're set the board up right, Juggernaut can be absolutely disruptive. When I play him, it always feels like he wins the game for my opponent. So I'm not the master of Juggernaut, but other people are. So for that reason, he goes in A tier, but there's a little bit of personal bias against it because I feel like he never plays for me. Kingpin. I'm going to put Kingpin in C tier. I feel like he's probably better than people have been seeing he is in the push decks. I don't particularly like the negative power that he puts on the cards that he punishes, but I can understand why he doesn't always make those decks and gets cut. So yeah, it's a funny one that I respect the reasons he does get cut, but I'm not sure it's fair. Leader. I think Leader's C tier. Again, not a card you get in every deck. I think in a big cards meta, where you're finishing games with massive cards, like maybe a Man Spider for argument's sake, Leader would be very good. Because essentially, say Leader's doing copying a Taskmaster from a Man Spider, that would be a massive Taskmaster. But saying that, when I'm just thinking that, he would actually copy the power of the last card played. So if you've got a bad card, it wouldn't actually be good. So I take that back. It'd be a terrible play, that. But the point being, if you've got a big, massive card on the board, a leader will be able to copy it, and then you've got that power for yourself. Think Black Panther. Your opponent's played a 5/10 a 5/5 Black Panther down, and you leader it, you're getting a 5/20 because it will on reveal again. So leader is good, but it does need very selective choice on when to play it. Lockjaw. I think I'm going to put Lockjaw in C tier as well. At one point, Lockjaw was a really good card. It didn't have the activate text. It just had the effect where you play a card in its location, it will swap it out. So as much as I appreciate the flexibility Lockjaw's now got in terms of being able to just, you choose when to move a card, I think the fact that it's a one-time activate is a little bit sad. It used to be very good at just rotating a lane, whereas now it's just one card in any lane. And I suppose it's the trade-off for choice versus randomness, but I'm not too sure. I have not really played Lockjaw much since the card came in this form. Magic. A tier card for me. You don't want to magic every game, because rule of thumb is if you were to put magic in every single deck, you would help your opponent more times than you'd help yourself. But when you need that extra turn to either get another draw or to create yourself more time for a setup for a final turn play, Magic's just great at doing it. Magneto. I am on the fence between A and S, and I'm going to go S. And I can't stick with it. Oh, I don't like it. Magneto. Magneto is such a good card. 6/12 stat line, which has never been altered. One of the few never buff cards in the game. Sorry, never nerf cards. Well, it's never been buffed or nerfed. And maybe that is what it needs now. Maybe it just needs a little buff. Maybe a 6/13 or a 14, because he's not getting as much play as he once did. And when I'm building decks, it's very rare I go, oh, I'll pop Magneto in here. And once upon a time, I did. Magneto is, a lot of the time, just a card you'd go, oh, a 6/12, he'll be good on the final turn. Whereas now, you tend to see a lot more Hulks than Magneto, purely because 6/14 is nicer. So, for that reason, he's got to drop to A, but man, that feels harsh, because for similar reasons, Doom's there, and I wanted to pair the two together, but I just can't justify it, because Doom's got great overall play still, whereas it works well with Doom 2099, whereas Magneto, he goes in some of these push decks, but he's not really as versatile as he once was. Again, I'll take comments about that, because I didn't like doing that myself. Maximus. For me, Maximus is going to belong in C tier, if I can line it up. There we go. It's good at doing its job in terms of you want to clog your opponent's hand, Maximus will fill it. If you want to disable it, you can find ways to do it, whether it's Cosmo or a card coming up in 0. So yeah, 2/6 stat line is nice. I'm not entirely sure it needs to go up any higher. So yeah, it just seems to sit nice and square in the middle, just doing its job. Miles Morales. I feel like Miles, unfortunately, is sitting down here in D tier now. And it's another one I don't like doing, because Miles' effect of reducing its cost to 1 is nice. But I feel like there are so many times when I would put it in a deck and I'd be like, I think I'll take Miles out and put something else in. And I think even if you boost it up by 1 to a 4/6, it might not be nice. Sorry, not 4/6, 4/7. Maybe they alter it to make it a 2/8 effective when it gets reduced, because a 2/8 would still be nice, even if it's a cost more. I don't know. I feel like they could cook something with Miles, but I don't know what exactly. Maybe they rework his... Well, I'm saying rework his text, but why would you do that to a card? So, yeah, I think Miles is just in a very funny spot where it's hard to justify him being in decks. And I don't particularly like that for Miles. It's a good card. Just hard to fit in. Alright, you guessed it. Next one up is Mr. Negative, and it's going in S tier. It is an archetype-defining card. You cannot do a Mr. Negative deck without Mr. Negative. Honestly, I feel like I need to try and hit Infinite one time with Mr. Negative, because as archetypes go, it's one I've never climbed with, and it's a strong archetype, so I feel I've neglected that card and I've let the archetype down myself. Mojo. The fact I have it infinite with Mojo over Mr. Infinite is a shocker. I'm going to put it in D tier, but honestly, if it was like ordered, I would probably put it at the bottom of D tier. It's very close to the cusp of F tier. You need to construct a deck to benefit from it. So Jean Grey, for instance, is a good pairing with Mojo because you can play the 2 in 1 lane and essentially say, you're going to have to fill this location, so you will trigger my Mojo. But a bit like with the phrase we used before that I've heard other people use, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And a 2/8 is nice, but is it worth all the effort to get it? Probably not. We're getting there. I'm just seeing we're an hour and 12 into this recording. Moon Knight. I feel like Moon Knight sadly is in the D tier. He did get altered, I think, from being just discarding a card to discarding a even cost card. And I'm sure his stock went up a bit then, because it's obviously both hands, so it's a bit of disruption as well. I just don't think he's maintained the level of play he got since that. Maybe if he got a little buff, it would change. Maybe a 3/5. But again, I'm not too sure. I think sometimes there's a risk of discarding something you want with Moon Knight, which is a bit odd, but maybe with these Khonshu shells, it could be tried a bit more, but again, there are more targeted discards that probably target the cards you want to discard more, so think about Khonshu, you can target it with a Lady Sif, or I mean, the other thing as well, even though it's not on this list, is Corvus Glaive. Corvus just discards 2 random cards from your hand. True, it's random, but you get +1 energy, so Moon Knight's got to go up against that, and that's where the difficulty lies, that arguably Corvus has got the better ability, so it's like, why would you play Moon Knight over that? Yeah, it's difficult. Mysterio. I like Mysterio. I think we're going to put him in B tier. I feel like a 2/5 stat line, great. The fact that you can swap it, great. If it was still the 2/4 that played illusions at all locations, or the other locations, and basically guess which one's real, I probably would have moved it up to A, because I did like that version of Mysterio. But in its current state, I'm not as fond, so a 2/5 it is. Mystique. Mystique is an A tier card. If you've not got something to target with Mystique, it's definitely a dead draw. But if you've got something to target, which you should have, considering deck construction, she usually will have a good purpose. Nick Fury. I feel like Nick is D tier. So we're at the point where we've got more Ds than S's at the moment. It's nice getting 3/6 cost cards in your hand, don't get me wrong. You probably get some play in these limited time events. But honestly, it just feels like the randomness, again, is not worth the reward when it comes to an Iron Patriot. Again, we're looking at Series 3 versus Series 5 there, but I would rather, if I've got my wide collection, to be playing Iron Patriot than Nick. But if you haven't got Iron Patriot, Nick does have value. I'm not sure it's a value that would raise it much higher, but maybe it would bump up to C tier in that context. Omega Red, very loose C tier. It's probably C on the cusp of D. Is it 3 power it gives? Yeah, +3 power to other locations. I honestly think that could go up to 4. Maybe I'm being overly generous, but a 4/5 stat line with +4 power to other lanes, I think would be quite interesting. Especially if you were to include Onslaught in the mix. I think that would be very interesting for an opponent to have to handle. Whereas +3 is essentially, trying to remember the card name, Starbrand. It's the effect Starbrand does, but he's doing that against his will, if you like, whereas Omega's choosing to give +3. So I feel like he could make it +4, and no one would say, oh, that's not much. You know, you're getting +2 in another lane. Or other lanes. Patriot, nice and straightforward. Patriot is S tier. You have Patriot decks. And honestly, all of these 0 ability cards, one of which we've got coming up, you wouldn't be able to power up without Patriot. So, or at least Patriot or High Evolutionary. So, yeah, Patriot's just a fantastic card. We've got Polaris. Polaris, I think we put in C tier. She's good at doing what she does in these push decks. You know, like say you've got a 1 cost on the board and you've got a Kingpin or a Scream. Polaris will just cause a move that will trigger them. It doesn't do much more, sadly. I can't help but think maybe they could make it she pulls 2 cards, but or she pulls 1 of each cost, but then you probably want reduce of power, 3/3 instead of 3/5, so I'm not entirely sure it'd be worth it, but again, maybe I'm just being greedy wanting that. Psylocke, B tier. Are you showing up in B tier? Because I can't see you. There we go. Just the bonus energy used to be good in Mr. Negative decks, probably good now in Doom 99 decks. Just great if you want to get a little bit ahead of curve and play some cards earlier. Quake. I'm going to put Quake in C tier. C tier going ahead for the first time here because I feel like Quake is an underplayed card. I've picked that for a few of them, I think, in this tier. But I feel like Quake should get more play because it's a very surprising effect in the sense of, say you've been filling the Nexus and then Quake is played and moves the Nexus. It can be really frustrating for it to happen to you. But I think people don't play Quake for that reason because the reward is not that frequent to justify the inclusion. But just supposing you were to pick it in a draft, it would be a very good card. It would probably win you games. Quinjet. Quinjet for me is an easy... Oh, I was going to say B tier, but I think A tier, actually. If you're playing cards, created cards, Quinjet will love it. So, yeah, nice and easy one for Quinjet. Red Skull. Red Skull for me is B tier. I feel like it's dropped off where it once was. I think at the height of Red Skull's power, it was really oppressive. Shuri Red Skull used to be a nightmare, 5/28 on the board. But you never see that playline now, and I think part of that is Taskmaster, which is coming up, being nerfed, kind of. So yeah, I feel like Red Skull has kind of been punished because of that. But it still does all right in these off-going shells, you know, with Nightmare, Sauron, etc. But outside of that, you don't see it much unless maybe someone's seen a lot of Cerebro and is just wanting to disrupt Cerebro decks. So yeah, I think BT is fine because it does its job effectively, which is a big stat line, but like everyone else, I think we wish we could do more with it. Rescue, F tier. I'm not even going to stick up for Rescue, except for the fact she's got very nice variants, and I would love it if they made the text more relevant. Rock Slide. I feel sad about Rock Slide. I really do. I'm going to put Rock Slide in C tier, and it's going to be very, very close to D tier. Once Rock Slide was everywhere in the meta because Dark Orc was a great card, but since Dark Orc faded, Rock Slide faded. And yeah, I can't help but think Rock Slide could probably go back to a 3-cost, or at the very least be afforded a power increase because Dark Orc's just not seen. You know, and you've got Terex the Tamer, I think the card's called, and the fact that can add 3 rocks to an opponent's deck at 3-cost, it's like Rock Slide's just dropped down. I mean, actually, you know what? I am going to put it in D tier. I don't like doing it, but it has just lost a lot of relevance because I think even Dark Orc decks would say, you know what, I'd rather Terex than Rock Slide. So, yeah, Rock Slide could do with a buff if I'm giving my honest opinion. Rogue. Rogue, I think, can go in B tier in that, again, she doesn't go in every deck, but I think if you have got like a Silver Surfer deck and you're thinking, I just need a little bit of tech, she's a good choice. She can just steal this really pesky ongoing ability that your opponent's got and just ruin their day. So for that reason, I think she's a solid inclusion there. Ronan. Ronan for me is A tier. Oh, you know what? I'm going to stick to my previous criteria. Ronan is actually an archetype defining card, so we both put him in S tier because all of this stuff with Master Mold and Maximus, they wouldn't even be in C tier if you didn't have Ronan as a card. So yeah, I feel like Ronan's got to go up there. You know, he wants you to fill your opponent's hand. So yeah, for me, S tier. Sarah, again, we're going to put this in S tier. So many Sarah shells. As a result, archetype defining card. Effect is fantastic in reducing the cost in your hand. Therefore, top tier card. one you want in your collection. Spider-Man. Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man here. I think that this one would go in C tier. I feel like Spidey probably doesn't get as much play as he once did, but it's still solid in push decks, so I think that's okay. Taskmaster. Very hard to choose this because I feel like it goes in C tier. When it's in a deck, it's because it's got a sole purpose in terms of, I mentioned Man Spider before. If you were to Taskmaster a Man Spider, great, you're going to get a very big number on your Taskmaster. But other than that, you don't really play it. And just thinking back to what I was talking about when it came to like Mr. Negative, it can go in those shells, which is decent. But Red Skull really got hit when Taskmaster went from a 5 cost to a 6 cost because you couldn't then do Taskmaster and maybe a She-Hulk or something. So yeah, it just lost a lot of value. So yeah, unfortunately C tier because it's got a use. It's not a dead card, but it's definitely fallen from like the A's and B's it once was. Hood. I think Hood can go in A tier quite comfortably. You know, the one -3 is a bit of a rough stat line, but you usually have ways to get rid of it. And then the demon it creates 1/6 is very good. So yeah, very straightforward A inclusion there. Thor. Oh. Thor, unfortunately, I feel has got to go into D tier because it'd probably be on the higher end of D, let's put it that way, but I wouldn't really want to play a Thor deck. Even with Beta Ray Bill in the later series, I feel like Thor just struggles when it comes to generating power that is not easy to counter. Like, anytime you build up a Thor, you're thinking, right, I'm at risk of being Shadow Kinged, I'm being risked at Shang-Chi'd. And it's very tricky to get past that hurdle. It's not to say it isn't a good card, to a degree. It's just, again, the risk is not always worth the reward. Typhoid Mary. I'm going to put the same tier as Red Skull. Good at doing its job. For me, solid B tier as long as you disable the ongoing effect. Ultron. Very solid A tier inclusion. I'm thinking to myself, possibly could have been S tier, but I think in A tier it's fitting because how many times have you had Ultron come out of X Mansion? You think, all right, that's my game over. So even though it is a good card when you want it in your deck, it can also be a game-ruining card if you get it when you don't want it. So yeah, Ultron I think is rightfully an A tier. Venom, arguably one of the best destroy cards in the game, so for me, it has to be S tier just for the fact it'll absorb all the power in a lane. Fantastic. Viper. Viper I'm happy putting in B tier because, again, a bit like Goblin, you kind of know what deck Viper goes in. You know, it's going to be these junk shells, but she's there for a reason and she does a job well. So I would say, yeah, that's warranted. Wasp. Wasp, I think we've put C tier. C tier, please. Thank you. Can I put that down here? There we go. Yeah, Wasp for me, Wasp does a job. You know, you want a cheap card with either no text so that Patriot can buff it, or you want Eye Evolutionary text. Either way, it's a cheap card that does a job. Is the effect always worth it? Not really, but it's a card and it does a job. I'm not selling it while I'm Wave. I actually think Wave's dropped off of late. I will put it in C tier, but I feel like I'm being generous. Of late, across the entire game, we've had much better ramp options. Well, it's not even a ramp option, it's a cost reduction option. So if you do want to get 6 costs down early, it's good. I mean, it's a good way of getting Galactus on the board if you've got priority. But other than that, I'm not sold on Wave being an auto-including deck as she may have once been. Wong. Wong for me is an easy A tier card. We have Wong in so many different shells that it's like you will always find him somewhere, but because of Cosmo, there's always the risk he will be neutered. So, good effect, quite easily countable, but how many people play Cosmo? That's the risk you play when you pick Wong. Yellow Jacket. I'm going to put it in F tier, and I respect there may be an argument for D tier in terms of you can play it first so that the on reveal doesn't kick in, which is a flick draw of the cards here with -1 power. But I think I might have done something with Yellow Jacket once, and it was kind of cool. It might have been a Thor shell, oddly enough, but it never feels worth the push again. Again, the juice is not worth the squeeze, and yeah, I think that's just the best way of summing up Yellow Jacket. And last but not least, we've got Zero. Zero is good at what it does, so I'm going to put that in B tier. I feel like the negative of Zero is that it being a 1 cost, it can be pulled from Shana. And the last thing I want with Shana is that the next card I play is disabled. So Zero can be good if it's in a deck of your choosing. But if you randomly receive that effect via a Shana, it is not good. So for that reason, yeah, it just drops down from A tier, I'd argue. But yeah, that's the deck list, or the tier list, I should say, not the deck list. This took a long time for me to record, so please, if you can, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think, though, because this was a massive undertaking compared to the first two in this series I did. And you know what? There might be some you disagree with, so I would like to know. All respectful if you can. I know you might have passion, you might have your opinions, but if you could leave it as respectful as you can, if you disagree with something, please do. What I will do, if I can, I will share this. Can I? Maybe that just shares it like a link. I'll put this on in the video description then. But yeah, let me know what you think, folks. And if you want to see a series 4 list, let me know in the comments. Until next time, folks, we'll be back tomorrow. I believe we'll be doing a preview for the new card, which I'm going to be frank with you, I do not know. So if I just pull up my schedule, we have got Tarantula next. Okay. Preview video on Tarantula coming up. Until then, folks, have a good rest of your day. Goodbye for now, everyone.